In ancient times, slavery was a phenomenon everywhere in the world. Slavery, in which humans are treated as livestock or property, existed since prehistoric times and disappeared only in modern times. Slaves in ancient times varied from gladiator slaves like Spartacus to doctors, and the number of slaves were large. There were even slaves who did sex work. In the Roman period, slaves accounted for about 1/5 of the total population, so society would not be able to function without slaves. As dependence on slaves was high, the number of slaves was large, which led to frequent slave revolts, originally a small town on the Italian peninsula. Rome reigned supreme in the Mediterranean, eventually occupying a vast region. Ancient Rome won numerous wars and achieved an age of peace with the establishment of a republic. After winning countless wars, Rome secured many prisoners of war as it had vast territories. Farming practices took advantage of the abundant land and production was high. But the Romans often had other jobs as well as being farmers, so it was difficult to manage the land properly. As the surplus population of prisoners of war of population increased, at the same time as there was a shortage of workers, a culture of slavery was naturally born in ancient Rome. The etymology of the Latin word servus, which means slaves, is servere, which means to revive troops defeated in battle. The slaves of ancient Rome that were reborn in this way were engaged in various jobs, from the neighboring Greeks to Germans and Jews. There were more than 10 races of slaves in ancient Rome alone. The work of slaves was initially focused on simple labor such as agriculture and housework. But over time, slaves for recreational purposes, such as gladiators and sex slaves, also emerged. The slaves of ancient Rome were a little different from the slaves we imagine. Slaves were in charge of roles held by office workers and professionals in modern times. The doctors mentioned earlier were also slaves. Among the prisoners of war brought in after losing the war, there were various people, and of course some of them belonged to the intellectual class. These were talented people who could not be used as a simple labor force and were allowed to take on the same jobs as teachers and doctors that they were originally engaged in. It is said that Romans trusted a slave doctor more. There were also slaves who worked as captains because in ancient Rome, the owners of ships often asked the trusted slave to take over their ships. The people who worked in the imperial court was also often slaves. They had slave status. But what they were doing was actually the work of the ministers and bureaucrats of a country.